とみのミュージックへどうもみのです。It's my pleasure to welcome Jeff Skunk Baxter. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I always wanted to ask this question. You were inspired by the Ventures to pick up the guitar.
One of my inspirations for sure.
Do you consider that as a unique background and made you like stand out from other guitarists?
Well, I think so because I think what the Ventures brought to all of us guitar players was the idea that the most important thing is the melody. They would take popular songs and play the melody and write an arrangement around it, but it was always mostly about the melody. So I'm 11 years old. I'm living in Mexico. I grew up in Mexico. So I start to listen to my first Ventures record and I think, yeah, these guys, they're playing the melody of the song. So that's what I should learn to play. And then from there, I will hopefully become a better guitar player. And I wrote a letter to Bob Bogle from the Ventures when I was 11 years old. And he
wrote you back?
He answered back. I said, I love the Ventures. What kind of guitar should I buy? He told me I should buy a Fender Jazzmaster. Now in Mexico City, in 1959, the Fender Jazzmaster was very expensive. But I finally ended up getting one. And then years later, when I met the Ventures and ended up playing with them and ended up producing records for them, it kind of came full circle. And Bob and I became very, and he still had the letter after all these years.
That's amazing.
It was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Was pretty cool.
I kind of think that most of the rock guitarists have either blues or R&B background. And I kind of think having Ventures element in style is a little unique.
Well, I don't know, because my background in guitar, certainly I listened to the Ventures and Link Wray and Billy Muir and the Shadows, but I also listened to Wes Montgomery and Teddy Bunn and Charlie Christian and Django Reinhardt and Howard Roberts. They were as influential on my guitar playing, I think, as the Ventures. So it'd be, I don't know if I could say that all guitar players come from an R&B background. As a matter of fact, early rock and roll guitar players, like Scotty Moore and people like that, had a jazz upbringing, a jazz background. So they brought that interpretation to the rock and roll part of it. They were very facile, they were very accomplished in what they were playing. They just played it with a lot of energy. So I don't know, I think that it's hard to categorize. Certainly many young guitar players learn to play from listening to the Ventures. You're absolutely right. Because we were just kids and there weren't that many guitar instrumental albums.
Even in the States too, because the reason why I'm asking this is because the Ventures had a major influence in Japanese rock scene. Especially during the 60s and 70s. Well, you've been working with the Ventures, so you probably already know about this. But, the Ventures were writing hits exclusive for Japanese singers, right? Do you find any connection between like Japanese music and the Ventures music? Like maybe the shamisen, strumming sound, I don't know.
I don't know, I never really thought about it. I did see this all-girl band called the Unventures or something.
Unventures?
They were really good. They were just young girls.
Band?
Yeah, a Japanese band. And they were very meticulous in their interpretation. They wanted to get it exactly right. So as far as the influence of Japanese music on the Ventures, I don't really know. I never asked Bob or I never asked Don or any of the guys about that. But what I certainly would agree to is the fact that the Japanese public was so loyal and so appreciative of what the Ventures did. They gave them the energy to keep going. And that's important, having the support. So whether it was music, I don't know, but certainly personally and intellectually and from a popular standpoint, definitely.
Can you tell me about your relationship with Jimi Hendrix?
Yes, like everything else, it gets overblown. I was just a kid working in a guitar store in Manhattan, in New York, at Jimmy's Music Shop. And a gentleman named Jimmy James came into the store and he had a guitar. It was a beat up Fender Duosonic. And he was looking for something to upgrade. And I had just finished working on a right-handed Fender Stratocaster, a white Stratocaster that I had strung up left-handed for another customer who didn't come in and pick it up. So I had it on the shelf. And so he said, I asked him what he would like, and he said, well, he wasn't really sure. So I said, well, try this. And I handed it to him, and he really liked it, so I traded him. Now my boss, 3 weeks of my salary out.
Because doing that, because Duosonic is fairly cheap compared to
right.
Yeah.
And it was kind of beat up, and
yeah,
which is fine. I mean, I didn't really care, and we had become friends after that.
So was it? Sorry to interrupt, but was it the time that he was playing? I mean, was it during his R&B days?
He had just finished playing, I believe. I know he went on the road with Little Richard, and I think he was playing with Joey D and the Starlighters at the Peppermint Lounge. But at that particular time, he was playing with his band called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames at the Cafe Wah in Greenwich Village at that particular time.
So that sounds like it's just before Chas Chandler.
Chas Chandler came to the club, saw him play, and signed him as his manager.
That's a crazy story. That's a huge contribution for you to like shape the sound.
I think it was more luck, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody would have done it. I'm happy
Yeah.
that I did, and it was nice to get to know him. It was nice to have him. We weren't super close, but I'm sure you have friends that you don't see for a long time, and as soon as you see them again, it's like you never went away.
Yeah.
So he and I had that kind of relationship.
You sound so humble, but I think you have the credit.
I don't know.
All right, so I want to talk about your new album, Speed Up Heat. Surprisingly, this is your the very first solo album.
Yes.
And what was your motivation to finally create your own record?
Are you familiar with the term bucket list?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I've checked off every box on my musical bucket list, except for doing a solo album. So I think it's time to check that box.
What was other major bucket list? I mean, the things that you wanted to do.
I wanted to be in a band that had a #1 record.
Yeah.
I wanted to produce a #1 record. I wanted to play guitar on a #1 record. I wanted to engineer a #1 record. I wanted to, they're just again, checking things off the box. Not that they were particularly goals that I was thinking about waking up in the morning going, you know, today I really I have to do this. But to me, they were milestones in my career that I could look back and say, okay, I can at least get a kind of a feeling for what my career has been like. And yeah, the solo record is pretty much the last thing.
What's the last thing?
And touring with my own band.
Right.
So I suppose that's another little checkbox underneath the solo album.
I really like the track list. So My Old School, Do It Again, or Steely Dan Classics. And your vocal on My Old School is amazing. I heard that you originally tried to offer Steven Tyler.
Yeah, I called Steve.
Yeah, and he said your voice is amazing, so he said you should.
Well, he didn't say it was
it.
amazing, but it was a compliment. He said, why don't you sing it? I said, because I'm not a singer. I'm a guitar player. He said, well, it sounds good to me. Why don't you do it? And I figured, okay, well, he is a singer, and he knows a lot more about singing than I do.
Yeah.
So, and he's a friend, so if he's not going to tell me to do something that he doesn't think is right. So I took his advice.
It wasn't your bucket list to
No.
sing?
No, that was a new one. I had to add that box. Right.
And also Venture's tune. This is a classic as well. Patch and My Place in the Sun, which is a collaboration with Michael McDonald. How was working with him like after all these years?
Well, we've been friends since Steely Dan. And Apache, by the way, the original version was Burt Whedon, and then it was The Shadows and Jorgen Ingman. And the Ventures did a cover version, like they would normally do.
Yeah.
But
well, thanks for the correction.
Pardon?
Thanks. For
I'm not trying. Yeah, I'm not trying to be. But yeah, Burt Whedon was the actual first person to record it, and Burt Whedon was an English guitar player, a British guitar player that got very famous for writing a book called How to Play the Guitar in One Day.
I didn't think it was that sound came from British musician. It was totally like American.
Well,
Western
his recording was not very successful.
Oh.
And then the Shadows, Hank Marvin and the Shadows recorded it, and Jorgen Ingman recorded it. Two very different versions. And Jorgen Ingman's version became the hit in the United States.
So, I don't know, I thought it was straight up the Ventures classic.
No, but they were smart. They know the good songs.
Right. After this, I had this question about your career as a missile defense consultant.
Well, I can just say that I'm very fascinated with technology, and it's been a great opportunity to be able to immerse myself into very advanced technologies. And people say, well, what the hell does that have to do with playing the guitar? And I always say, a radar is just a guitar on steroids. It's the same physics. So if you understand the physical tenets of how all that works, whether you're working on radars or guitars, it's not, to me, it's not that much different.
Yeah, I heard that your interest in musical technology led to the...
Yeah, absolutely. Looking for cutting edge, advanced technologies to apply in the musical world.
What specific technology was that?
Well, there's a couple. One was data storage. Yeah, late 60s and early 70s, we were beginning to transition into the digital world, the world of digital technology, going out of analog and into digital. To be able to make a really good synthesizer, most synthesizers at the time, as I'm sure you know, were analog. They were big and bulky, and there was no way to really reduce the size of that. With digital technology, all of a sudden it opened up a lot of possibilities. And one was the ability to store the data that you would need to both build and play and execute on a synthesizer. And the other was to record digitally, because up until a certain period of time, everything was recorded on analog tape.
Yeah.
The money that was being spent by the military and by the government on these technologies, billions of dollars, offered to me an opportunity to be able to familiarize myself with the technology and then be able to adapt it.
To music.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like one of the most fascinating and unique career that you have achieved.
Well, you know, Brian May has got his master's degree in astrophysics.
Yeah, true.
So, and Paul Reed Smith is building some very amazing stuff for the military. And do you remember the actress? Did you ever remember the actress named Hedy Lamarr?
I don't think so.
Well, she was a very famous actress in the 30s. She invented the frequency hopping radio.
Really?
Her husband was a physicist, but she came up with the idea. So, you know, maybe it's not that far out.
But it's crazy to think about, so you have all these footprints in different realms. I mean, music and the missile defense consultant, and also, I mean, you're a multi-instrumentalist, but you never sung a lead vocal on a song.
No, that took me by surprise,
Yeah.
I have to tell you. I didn't see that coming. And I thank Steve Tyler for giving me the confidence to do that.
Do you have any favorite Japanese artists, except for Unventures?
One of my favorite keyboard players ever, Kojima. An unbelievable player. We did a record together.
Oh, really?
I think it was called LA Sessions, I think it was, back in the day. One of the best keyboard players I'd ever heard in my life. So, and I'm fascinated with the way the Japanese, many of the Japanese musicians have been able to interpret other kinds of music. I think Tito Puente, the Latin artist, a salsa award with a Japanese salsa band. So they must be great players.
Yeah, Latin is really popular in Japan.
So I have a lot of respect for Japanese musicians. And my friend from Roland, he used to work at Roland, Aikito Ueno, great guitar player, wonderful guitar player. So I've had a chance to work with some really, really good musicians in
Thanks
Japan.
for the mentions, I think.
They should be, they're great players.
I think your fans in Japan really wants to know about those things, so.
Well, music doesn't have any national boundary.
Right.
And I think it's unfair to do that. I think there are great musicians everywhere. But the Japanese musicians are good, and also they're very technically oriented because Japan had been present and so much a part of the advance of data and technology and melding it with music.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the companies like Roland and Akai, these Yamaha. These people are cutting edge, and they were cutting edge in the beginning. Came from Japan.
Do you have any message for your fans in Japan?
Well, I really appreciate the fact that everybody's coming to these shows. They're packed, and it's a very nice compliment. You never know whether people are going to like what you do or not. So I'm really pleased and very happy that people have accepted, I guess, the music that myself and my colleagues, especially my music partner, C.J. Vanston, brilliant musician on his own, who helped me with this project. And the other two players in the band, the drummer and the bass player, Hank Horton, the bass player, and Mark Damian, the drummer, just unbelievable musicians. The bass player is not only a great bass player and singer, but he plays bass for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra.
Really?
I mean, these guys are really serious musicians. So to bring them to Japan, the response that we had last night, I'm just very thankful and thank all the Japanese people very much for accepting my music.
Thank you. And also thank you for inviting me for the show. I'm really excited to...
Hope you have fun.
Yeah, hear your band. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.